Hi guys, I'm Tom, and today we'll dive into what the Bottomless Pit is, one of the most chilling, mysterious, and fascinating supernatural anomalies from Gravity Falls. This isn't a monster or a conscious entity as such, but in any case, it's something terrifying. The Bottomless Pit is a large hole located on a part of Stanford Pine's property near the Mystery Shack. It's theorized to be some kind of wormhole to another dimension or a time loop. Interestingly, this place is based on a real urban legend that is equally eerie and mysterious. In this video, I'll explain in detail the story and possible origins of the Bottomless Pit from Gravity Falls. Then, I'll discuss its physical appearance, what we know about its functioning, and what's mentioned about it in Journal Number 3. Later, I'll delve into the real-life legend that inspired Alex Hirsch to create this concept. As I've already mentioned, the Bottomless Pit is a massive, deep, dark hole with no apparent end, located near the Mystery Shack in the forests of Oregon, close to the town of Gravity Falls. This peculiar site is the central antagonist in an entire episode of the epic animated series, with the entire chapter revolving around its mysterious nature. According to Dipper Pines, this place is a kind of wormhole where time doesn't exist. Before fully analyzing the Bottomless Pit, I want to briefly cover its story in the series in Journal Number 3. Long before Dipper and Mabel Pines arrived in Gravity Falls, the scientist Stanford Pines discovered this peculiar anomaly near his cabin. Intrigued, he began conducting experiments to identify consistent patterns in this strange pit. In Journal Number 3, Ford writes the following: "I want to get to the bottom of this mystery, but it seems impossible. This Mobius pit appears to be a strange time loop that always resets to the beginning. Many things I've thrown into the pit eventually return, but others never come back. It's nearly impossible to determine or predict what will return and what won't. There's no discernible pattern related to the time of day or the weather, so these factors don't seem to influence what comes back. Of course, socks never return. Interestingly, junk mail always does." Ford also observes that the speed at which objects return varies, and concludes that if something doesn't return within 24 hours, it's likely lost forever. He adds that valuable items shouldn't be thrown into this place, since there's no way to know what will come back. Finally, he writes the following alongside a sketch of the Bottomless Pit: "One day I might gather the courage to throw myself into the pit out of sheer curiosity, to discover what it truly is. However, I could end up in an unknown place or a plane of existence I'm not prepared for. Or, most likely, I'd waste 20 minutes telling stories to entertain myself until this tunnel ends." This last note is a clear reference to the episode in the series where Stan, Dipper, Mabel, and Seuss fall into the pit and tell stories to pass the time. The Bottomless Pit is also mentioned in one of the early episodes of the first season, when Uncle Stan organizes a fair outside the Mystery Shack, and Dipper suggests to Robbie that he jump into the pit. Later, in the episode titled The Bottomless Pit, Stan takes his nephews to the pit to dispose of things they no longer need. Although Dipper doubts the existence of a bottomless pit due to his skepticism, Stan continues throwing objects, like parking tickets and other useless items, until a strong wind appears out of nowhere, marking the start of a strange event. The kids and Seuss become worried about this and grab Stan. However, this causes all of them to fall into the mysterious pit. Once inside, they scream for a while until they get tired, and Seuss asks if they want to keep screaming a bit longer. Dipper then asks where they are, and Mabel, after lighting a glow stick, says they're in a place that is nothingness. Stan concludes that they'll be stuck in the pit for a while, so he tries to perform a card trick to entertain the kids and Seuss. When this fails, Seuss suggests they tell stories to pass the time. This is where the episode truly begins. After telling some very strange and funny stories, Dipper and the others see a light in the pit and panic, believing it to be the end of the tunnel. They all start screaming, and in a very curious and strange turn of events, they emerge from the Bottomless Pit in the exact same spot where they fell in. They then realized that no time had passed while they were in the pit. Because of this, Dipper concludes that the place is some kind of wormhole or time loop. Everyone agrees, but Stan says no one will believe them. Therefore, they decide to keep the incident a secret. Afterward, Stan leans against the sign near the pit and falls in again. However, Seuss and the kids don't worry, knowing their uncle will eventually return. During the episode's credits, Stan is shown alone in the pit, very bored, saying the whole situation is ridiculous. In one of the final episodes of the first season, the Bottomless Pit reappears, specifically in the episode titled Dreamscapers. In this chapter, while inside Uncle Stan's mind, Mabel shoots Bill Cipher with a toy gun, causing him to drop the combination to Stan's safe into the Bottomless Pit. This prevents Gideon from obtaining the deed to the Mystery Shack, which was stored in the safe. Throughout the series and promotional shorts, there are references to the Bottomless Pit, although it doesn't reappear directly. Lastly, journal number 3 reveals that Stanford Pine's 3 journals were thrown into the Bottomless Pit after the events of Weirdmageddon, following Bill Cipher's defeat. It's important to note that although the series shows Bill Cipher destroying Stanford Pine's 3 journals in a fit of rage during Weirdmageddon, journal number 3 reveals that the journals reappeared intact after the event. This is because when Weirdmageddon ended, all the weirdness in the area disappeared, and everything Bill had destroyed was restored. For this reason, Ford decided to dispose of the journals by throwing them into the Bottomless Pit sometime later. Now that we've covered the detailed history of the Bottomless Pit in the Gravity Falls series, I want to explore its appearance, possible origin, and the real-life legend that inspired this concept. The Bottomless Pit is a large, round hole in the ground. According to journal number 3, it has a diameter of 15 feet, approximately 4.5 meters. Next to the pit, there's a sign that reads Bottomless Pit. Inside the pit, there's no light, and its walls are made of seemingly unbreakable rock and soil. In the book titled Dipper and Mabel's Guide to Mystery and Nonstop Fun, Seuss draws a diagram of the Bottomless Pit. However, it's just a page that says, Bottomless Pit here. On this page, Seuss advises people to stay away from the pit, claiming that strange fourth-dimensional things happen there, or at least that's what he says. Although the series doesn't explain the origin of the Bottomless Pit, if we consider Stanford's theory about the wormhole and time loop, as well as his conclusions in the grand theory of weirdness from Gravity Falls, we can assume that the pit is a result of the interdimensional portals Bill Cipher opened in the area. Interestingly, Dipper didn't write about the Bottomless Pit in the journal, even though he documented all the anomalies he encountered that summer. Finally, I want to quickly cover the true legend that inspired this concept. In the United States, there's a fascinating radio show focused on the paranormal and supernatural called Coast to Coast. In 1997, a man named Mel Waters was a special guest on the program and spoke with host Art Bell about a mysterious bottomless pit located on his property near the town of Ellensburg in Washington state. Mel Waters explained that people in the area and his neighbors would often visit the pit to throw away unwanted items like trash, old refrigerators, and tires. The strangest part was that, no matter the size of the objects, the pit never seemed to fill, and no one ever heard the items hit the bottom. For this reason, locals began to theorize that the pit was truly bottomless. Some even concluded that the pit was a gateway to hell, or a parallel dimension. When Mel and his family purchased the property, they initially noticed the existence of the pit and began using it as a trash dump. However, after hearing stories from neighbors and realizing that the objects they threw into the pit never seemed to reach the bottom, Mel grew curious and conducted some simple experiments. He used a fishing rod with a line and weights, but no matter how much line he used, he never managed to find the bottom. Mel's animals, including his dogs, displayed strange behavior. They were terrified of the pit and refused to go near it. This led Mel to ask the locals about the place. Many shared odd stories, such as items thrown into the pit never reappearing, One local hunter claimed he had thrown the body of his deceased dog into the pit, only to see the same dog alive in the woods days later, still wearing its collar. However, the dog ran away upon seeing him, and the hunter never saw it again. Eventually, Mel Waters discussed these experiences on the radio show with Art Bell. Days later, when he attempted to return to the pit to continue his experiments, he found several military personnel blocking access. They claimed a plane had crashed on his property and that they were conducting cleanup operations. They threatened to arrest him if he didn't comply. Later, government agents offered to pay him $50,000 to lease his property on the condition that he leave the country and not return without permission. Mel accepted the deal and moved to Australia for several years. However, he missed his home country and returned earlier than allowed. This led the government to cancel the agreement and seize his property. This is where the story and urban legend of Mel's hole end. According to Mel, the pit was approximately 15 miles, about 24 kilometers, deep, as that was the maximum length of line he was able to lower with his fishing rod. Both Mel and other locals reported strange occurrences related to the pit. Some claimed that a seal-like creature with humanoid eyes emerged from the pit and tried to communicate and interact with humans. It's worth mentioning that nothing is known about Mel after his appearance on the radio show, and there are no official records of Mel Waters in Washington state. For this reason, the story is considered more of an urban legend than a verified fact. When I watched the Gravity Falls episode featuring the Bottomless Pit, I immediately thought of the legend of Mel Waters' pit. I found it to be a fantastic reference, as Alex Hirsch, the creator of the series, clearly has knowledge not only of horror movies, but also of urban legends in general. This concept was brilliantly incorporated into the series, as the Bottomless Pit is mentioned several times throughout the 2 seasons. Personally, I believe in Ford's theory about the time loop, as it seems more logical compared to the idea of a wormhole. But what do you think? Were you already familiar with the Bottomless Pit from Gravity Falls? Did you know its full story and possible origins? Had you heard of the legend of Mel Waters' Bottomless Pit, or was this new to you? Leave your answers and thoughts in the comments about this mysterious location from the epic animated series Gravity Falls. As always, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and share it to support the channel. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos.